Welcome to Texas Rye Whiskey Studies for the National Rye Tournament. This is going to be episode 17 of Texas Rye Whiskey Studies, but National Rye Tournament episode number 9, match number 3. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, where it is currently about 80 degrees on Sunday, May 3rd, 2026. Now, what I'm doing with this tournament is I sample and review various rye whiskeys one at a time. And then after 2 whiskeys, I place them in a head-to-head match to see which one I like the best. The bracket we're currently studying is the under 90 proof bracket. So far, we have seen Basil Hayden Dark Rye beat Alberta Premium. Both of those are 80 proof. We've seen Jim Beam narrowly edge our Canadian Club Rye. Again, both are 80 proof. And today we're going to pit Basil Hayden Malted Rye against Pendleton 1910, a 12-year-old. Both 80 proof. The rules. I judge these whiskeys on their history, bottle, label, marketing, composition, appearance, nose, taste, mouthfeel, burn, and finish, flexibility, but the deciding factor really is if I was offered these 2 whiskeys 5 nights in a row, but I could only choose one each night, which one would I choose 3 out of 5 nights? So it's all about drinkability for me. In case of a tie, though, and this has happened, price, value, and availability can determine the winner. Now, just for fun, I drink these whiskeys out of blacked out Glencairn glasses so that I can't use any visual clues to determine which one is which. And then just for fun, at the end, I do try to figure out which of these whiskeys is in which glass, see if I can determine that. So there's choosing the winner, but then there's, can I figure out who's who, right? The Basil Hayden is in glass number 1 on the bottom of the glass, and the Pendleton is glass number 2 on the bottom. So let's look at history. For history, when I reviewed these whiskeys, I scored the Basil Hayden Malted a 5, but the Pendleton got a 4. And so the Basil Hayden's going to win that. But why did I score down the Pendleton? Ownership is still a little bit questionable in my mind. The trademark I came across was owned by somebody, but somebody else owns the brand, and then somebody else distills it, and somebody else bottles it. The history behind it was also a little confusing. So ownership history of the Pendleton was a little bit complex and unclear. So the Basil Hayden Malted for the win on history. Bottle, label, and marketing. Basil Hayden Malted, I scored a 5, and for their bottle and their label and marketing, and the Pendleton got a 4. Really, it boils down to, I really like the Basil Hayden bottle and label. I mean, they put a lot of effort and money in that. Yeah, this one's got a lot of embossing on there. It's got the rodeo horse. You can see right there, maybe you can determine that. Embossing doesn't do a whole lot for me if it's overdone. So I'm going to side with the Basil Hayden on this. Now, when marketing Pendleton came out into my area about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, huge marketing campaign, but it was for the whiskey, not for the rye. So Basil Hayden again for the win. Appearance of these whiskeys, well, you can't really tell much in the bottle, but I kind of think that the 12-year-old Pendleton edged out the Basil Hayden, and that's how I scored it on the 2 reviews. So for appearances, Pendleton, I gave a slight edge to for the win. Now, composition. Both of these whiskeys are 100% rye. The Basil Hayden is malted, while the Pendleton is aged for 12 years. So, you know, there's a 6 of one, half dozen of another approach, really, is that they both have some advantages there. However, source of distilling. for the Pendleton, again, is somewhat in question. I think, well, one source that I read mentioned that several distilleries had contributed to this, that it's a blended Canadian. Alberta Distillery is probably the main base for this, but who knows who contributed to it, whereas this is all Jim Beam, Jim Beam product for Basil Hayden. So for composition, the source of the water in the Pendleton, if it's distilled in Canada, but then they cut it with Oregon water. So there's a little bit of fine tuning with that. So composition, I'm just going to say is a tie. I mean, there's things for both sides there, so that's going to be a tie. Flexibility and versatility. The Basil Hayden Malted was available, or was a 4. I gave it a 4. But the Pendleton, for flexibility and versatility, I gave a 5. The difference between these two is in the cocktails, the Basil Hayden seemed to get lost in the cocktail, and the Pendleton retained a lot of its original flavor. So I think the Pendleton made the better cocktail. So for flexibility, versatility, I'm going to go with Pendleton for the win. They are both wonderful, neat. I'll add that. Price, value, and availability. There we go. The Basil Hayden was available at all 3 of the big stores I shop at here in Fort Worth. However, the Basil Hayden Malted Rye seems to be a ghost whiskey now. The Jim Beam Company is dropping this from the Basil Hayden lineup, it looks like, and replacing it with a golden rye, is what they're calling it. Whereas the Pendleton was only at 2 out of the 3 stores, but the Pendleton is also $10 cheaper than that Basil Hayden. Both have great taste, but I'm going to say for value, the Pendleton had the better value with the better price, and it's still widely available. So Pendleton for the win with price, value, and availability. So now let's get into the match. And like I said, I've got Basil Hayden in glass 1 and Pendleton in glass 2. I'm going to start with a nose, and I'm going to go left to right. Now, my sinuses are still all kind of messed up, so I don't know if I'll be able to smell anything or not. Very faint nose on this one. Very faint. Vague sweetness. That's about it. Is that my nose talking, or is that the whiskey? The one on the right. Very, very faint. I really think my nose is not working today. Yeah, that's just going to be a tie because I really can't smell anything today. My sinuses go bad all the time, so that's what makes smelling of whiskeys difficult. So now it comes down to taste. Start with the one on the left. Okay, that's a nice whiskey. Again, the flavors, they're mildly sweet, a little bit of spiciness, a little bit of wood, Nothing dramatic going on there. Although I will say it's got a decent mouthfeel with a decent burn. Huh. Not sure which that one is. Now we'll go to the one on the right. That one had a little bit deeper, richer taste. Wow. Some dark notes going on there. Huh. The other one was a little bit more bright and lively. This one was a little bit deeper, richer. I'm not going to be able to tell these, figure out who's who. I'll tell you that. I'm not an expert with these two whiskeys. Decent mouthfeel. Not as much of a burn as the first one had. A little bit milder. Medium finish there with those deep, darker notes. If I was to guess, I would say that the one on my right might be Class 1 with the Basil Hayden. Going back to the one on the left. That one may have a little bit more actual rye notes going with it. Huh. This will be difficult. Okay, for taste, I'm going to go with the one on the right. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish, though. Wow. The one on the left had more of a burn. I think the one on the right's got a better finish, and the mouthfeel's about the same for both of them. That's odd. I'd think the 12-year-old would stand out. Huh. So I'm going to go with a tie there. All right. Which one do I prefer? I think I'm going to... Let me try one more round. That one has more of a rye flavor. This one, deeper, richer. This is tough, but I think I'm going to have to side with the one on the right as the winner. And which is which? I think the one on the right is the BH, the Basil Hayden. So that should be glass number 1. Let me see if the winner is glass number 1, Basil Hayden. That is correct. All right, Basil Hayden wins out over the Pendleton Rye 12. There's your winner right there. Now, going into this competition, I favored the Pendleton Rye. I really thought that Pendleton was gonna win. I knew it was gonna be close, but that Pendleton Rye had some maple flavor going in. I couldn't taste that today, and this is exactly why you do blind tastings. When you know what you're drinking, you can look for certain flavors that you assume are going to be there. When you don't know what you're drinking, you're relying totally on your taste buds and your mouthfeel, your burn, the finish. And so there's no preconceived idea about which is which. Or you can have preconceived ideas, but your mouth is going to override those. So I thought the Pendleton was going to win. Now, it was close, but Basil Hayden Malted Rye for the win. And I guessed it right, which is unusual for me. My batting average there is 50% at best. And so this was a rare win for me. Now, the winner frequently gets a cocktail. And I've already stated that I thought the Basil Hayden was weak as far as a cocktail goes, but I'll give it another try. I'll make a cocktail and come right back. And I'm back with an old-fashioned. Now, this is different from the one I made previously with the Basil Hayden Malted Rye. Previously, I used Angostura bitters, black walnut bitters, and I think a turbinado sugar cube. This time I stuck with the turbinado, but I used Angostura and Aztec chocolate bitters this time. There's some dark notes to this malted rye that I wanted to bring out, so I could have gone with the tobacco bitters, Turkish tobacco bitters, but I went with the Aztec chocolate bitters. So, never tasted this before. We'll see. And that is pretty darn good. Once again, though, I'm kind of thinking that the actual whiskey gets a little bit lost in there, which is not unusual with me and old fashions. So, as a drink, this is really quite good. The Angostura and the chocolate bitters really combines together. I've got an orange peel in there, and I've got a Luxardo dark cherry. So this comes across quite good. So the Basil Hayden Malted Rye does make a good cocktail, but this is my complaint about cocktails in general. If you don't want to taste the whiskey, build a cocktail. Okay? Cocktails are wonderful. Old fashioned is my favorite. It's my go-to. But most often, I lose the taste of the whiskey in here. So, if you don't like the taste of whiskey, make yourself a cocktail. That's right. But other than that, this is a wonderful drink. So, there we go. All right, what's next up for Texas Rye Whiskey Studies? We're moving on to the next matchup, and we're going to start by studying Blackland Rye Whiskey from Fort Worth, Texas. This is 12 minutes from my house, right here. This is an 83 proof whiskey. And once we review that, we'll move on to Three Rangers. And I think Three Rangers is 84 proof, maybe? Yeah, 84. And where's this from? I've forgotten. It's been so long since I looked at this. I'm thinking Chicago, but maybe not. Maybe Chicago. We'll see. we'll have to study that one. So those are the next two in the lineup. For now, this is Texas Rye Whiskey Studies out here.